as the slide says, we're just going to have a little Q&A session, and hopefully it kicks off with a couple of questions. However, we do have as a panel something that is quite that has come across one of the panel's desks, and we've been discussing. And so I don't know, Steve, Kurt, Gerry, if you want to jump in and do you want to go straight into that, or should we go into it with a couple of lighter questions, or I'm not quite sure how we want to approach this morning.
Yeah, so I think, Richard, lighter for a Thursday. Yeah, I think if we're going to eat that frog, let's do it first thing in the morning. And I think that, if we're going to have a look at where we are, yes, we did have some stuff planned for this morning, and this came across the desk, and we're seeing more and more of it, in terms of certificates that are being issued. So this is one that came across our desk, that we want to have a discussion about this morning. And various others that come and are submitted to insurers and homeowners, et cetera, et cetera. And the challenge that comes from this is that whenever there's a problem or an issue, it tends to land on either IOPSA or PIRB's desk, saying, well, I've got a certificate of compliance. And I think that our discussion this morning is just about verification of these things. Where are these individuals from? We've got no idea. But I think it's just to have a general discussion around this and to find out from the attendees, if this is something that they see often, or, the reasons behind this, I don't know. So, Kurt, Gerry, you want to jump in?
Sorry, Steve. Yeah, I just had to unmute myself. Yeah, we certainly see a lot of these. And if you look at it, what jumps out straight away is that it's a mismatch or a hash of a PIRB COC, and there's a lot of negativity or a lot of kickback against the PIRB COCs. But what's interesting is that everyone's copying it, almost down to. If you look at this, the first thing that springs out to mind is that this is issued from a PIRB. So that's telling you that as much as there's a kickback or whatever, and people want to come up with their own COCs, they are going straight back to almost an original PIRB COC, which is very interesting. So clearly, if PIRB are on the right track, because no one else has come up with anything totally different to theirs. And the bottom line is that all these COCs are not worth the paper that they're written on, for the simple reason that it has to be issued by a registered professional plumbing body. And there is, in South Africa right now, there is only one registered professional plumbing body, and that is PIRB, and that's it. So all of these mean nothing, and you've always got to say to yourself, if you're a plumber, you've always got to say to yourself, in the worst case scenario, if you're standing in front of a magistrate, if it ever goes down that route, are you okay? And if you produce this that you see here, you're not okay, because it's not worth the paper it's written on. So that's why I always tell people, make sure that when you run your business, you run it within the confines of the law, and that it's legitimate. And this is not legitimate, this COC. That's my take on it.
Yeah.
If I may jump in, guys, from my side, my opinion, honestly, is this is fraud. That's how I see it, and I think it's time that maybe PIRB, somebody needs to step up and start laying criminal charges regarding this issue, because there is no doubt that this was a PIRB COC which was taken, put onto Photoshop or whatever this program is, and they just changed a couple of things around, and they basically copied that certificate. So in my mind, there's no doubt that this is a distorted replica of the PIRB COC. The other thing I just want to mention, and I'm actually sitting with with the SANS 10.10.6 specifically regarding solar. And on section 9, where it talks about certificate of compliance, 9.1 says, and these are the words: a plumbing certificate of compliance from the plumbing professional body registered under the relevant national body shall be issued for the installation, replacement, or repair of any plumbing work inspected or where work has been carried out on hot water reticulation system, which includes the installation of a solar system. So guys, in my opinion, there is no doubt that at this point in time, as we speak, the only professional body registered in terms of the legislation is PIRB. Therefore, there is no way that you can go and replicate a document or do something. This is part of legislation, and again, it points back to the Water Services Act. So it is law. It is not what I think or what I feel, or I don't like PIRB, or I don't like this person. That's not what it's about. It is what does the legislation stipulate, and that's what's written in the law as it stands. So if there are people out there thinking of going this direction, I would say, guys, maybe you should just hang back a bit and just think about this thing, because I'm convinced that we are at the point where criminal charges are going to be laid against people doing this. And this specific certificate will be investigated to the full extent, where I will be part of that investigation. And I'm telling you now, I think it's time that we start going full out on these type of things. That's just my 5 cents here.
Yeah, but I think, an organization can register. So SGCCB might be a registered entity, which, you'll find out as it goes through. But the issue is quite correct in terms of what you say, to put these things over in terms of, the real McCoy, if we want to call it that, and to, what's the word for it, to mislead, the consumer. As you and I know, and Kurt and Richard, we all see these things that come across, and the ramifications are quite alarming in many cases, where the installations of these certificates have been submitted or this type of thing. And this is not the only one. So please, we're not just having a go. This just came up fresh. But again, I think we've got a lot of work to do with the consumers, because the consumer, this would look like a verbatim type certificate. And I think that we all, in terms of being responsible, registered, licensed plumbers, we all have a job to do in ensuring that the consumer is aware. And I think PIRB have been very good in terms of their roadshows and creating awareness, and so is IOPSA. And I think that we still got a long way to go, because again, anybody without the knowledge would look at this and go, it looks authentic. And that's the scary thing, like you said earlier, Eddie, with a copy and paste.
Steve, the other thing is, you touched on something just now, talking about a licensed plumber, and I see it's mentioned on the certificate right at the top. Only licensed plumbers are authorized to issue a plumbing certificate of compliance. Now, what is their definition of a licensed plumber? Or what is the definition of a licensed plumber at this point in time? So if they claim that a person being affiliated with them in some other way is a licensed plumber, I would like to see where do they get that authorization from.
Yeah, and I think if you look at eThekwini, eThekwini have what we call responsible plumbers. I think in Cape Town, they're licensed with or registered with the city of Cape Town. So there's various ways of doing it. And I think when it comes down to wordsmiths, people that take these type of documents and go, and I think, the standard, like you said earlier, Eddie, is that the standard is very clear. It's been up in the air and it's been challenged and everything else, but it still hasn't come to fruition. Okay, there's still further discussions and things to happen. But so the law, in terms of the installation from the certificate from a professional body, is still in the standard until such time as it's amended or changed in whichever way, or it remains the same. And I think that the sooner we realize this, if we want to be, licensed and taken seriously, as Kurt said earlier, then, we need to stand up and support this, because it amazes me how so many people will go out and try and replicate or duplicate or create their own certificates. And then the client a year later brings up the certificate saying, yes, I've got one. We know from a PIRB side that when there's an issue with the the Schedule 4 certificate in Cape Town, the PIRB get a lot of phone calls saying, well, I've got a certificate. So there's that mix that comes across. Now, this organization may be legit. It may be registered in one form or another. It may be a Section 21. Who knows what it is? But the key thing here is that the replication of the certificate is quite correct. What you're saying there, Gerrie, is that it is not in line with what the standards say. Richard?
Yeah, I think you guys have covered it. It's just flabbergasting to me. I mean, I'm just trying to think of the psychology behind it and the reasoning behind it. As you alluded to now, Steve, it's amazing that somebody would go to this time, trouble, and effort to create something that already exists and that it already works. And it works. How it works is that as we all know, the certificates of compliance that are issued and logged are audited. And so if we are talking about, as an industry, the need or the will to uplift and maintain standards within our industry, then this is how it is done. And it works. The fact that tends to stand on toes sometimes, and some installations get shown up for falling a little bit short here and there, that's not the fault of the system. That's the fault of the installer, and that is part of the process of uplifting the thing. So to try and bypass that, just because a bunch of people don't feel like putting lagging on, or whatever the case may be, whatever the reasoning behind it is, and that's what I'm struggling to understand within my own mind, is what is the reason? So everything else is in place. The need to be a particularly registered person, the need to be qualified, the need to do the will to do good work, everything's there except for the checks and balances. That's gone here. So it begs the question, why go to all this trouble, effort, and lie to your clients? Because that's what you're doing. You are lying to their faces, telling them that this is a legitimate COC, only to know that you are never ever going to be called up to answer for your shoddy workmanship. Because that's, guys, I know I'm using harsh words, but that's what it says. That's what this whole thing says to me. That's the message it's giving me. So it beggars belief. I don't know why somebody would go to so much effort to buck a system that works so well. And remember, when I say works so well, a lot of you will be rolling your eyes and saying it doesn't work because we always get shouted at, or this failed. But that's the system, guys. That's the point of it. We have to uplift. We have to showcase the shortcomings. How else are we going to do it? Give me another solution if we don't showcase the shortcomings. So yeah.
Richard, yeah, just to follow on exactly what you've said, and I've experienced it firsthand, is a plumber issued a mismatch of his own COC. So it was basically half of a Schedule 4. For those who don't know, down in the Western Cape, it is a City of Cape Town bylaw requirement on the sale of a property, the transfer of a property. The COC, the City of Cape Town has their own Schedule 4. They call it a Schedule 4 COC. And it's a very basic COC, and it has to be filled in, and that gets sent to the transferring attorney. So what has been doing the rounds in Cape Town is a bit of that and a bit of what you see here, PIRB COC combination. Now, the interesting thing is that a plumber did work which came to around about 180,000 Rand, which is quite a fair amount of plumbing on a renovation, and he issued a COC. I was contacted, and I said, was a COC issued? And they said yes. I said, can I have a copy of it? And what I saw was this mishmash of half Schedule 4 and half PIRB COC. The interesting thing is that the plumber issued this to the client. However, he is a current, paid up, and registered PIRB plumber So why did he not issue a PIRB COC? And that's exactly going back to what Richard said. He knowingly knows that his work is not up to the standard. He knows that he has a percentage chance of having his work audited. So he'd rather give that because he knows that his work won't be audited. However, due to certain circumstances, he was found out. So just be very careful, guys. Rather, ask yourself the question, why would a PIRB registered plumber not issue a PIRB COC and issue his own one? And that's simply what Richard was alluding to.
Yeah, so I agree with you, Kurt. And I think it's something, playing the devil's advocate. But I want to just read what Colin Becker's put up. I appreciate the training and knowledge we get from PIRB. The thing I feel is we get the hardings and still unlicensed guys are working. Even the guys working in municipalities that are head of plumbing works don't have a red seal. So imagine what message that sends out to the public. And I think that's a very relevant point that Colin raises, is that, again, the plumbers that are doing the right thing, are the ones that are being audited. We're not auditing, in terms of those that don't, because we honestly don't know who they are. Okay, we don't know who the plumber is unless we receive a complaint. And remember, if it's a complaint received and it's against a member or a registered or licensed plumber, then we can action. The other alternative is that, we do many, and Hetty's been involved in quite a few of them, where we actually then, at the cost to the consumer, and it's considerable cost to go out and do the reports. Richard's done them, we've all done them. And you go out and you go and do the inspection report and submit your findings. Then the consumer who's received the certificate in good faith then has to go through either the legal or go and try and recoup the money or get it repaired, or alternatively write it off and get somebody correct to do that. And again, this is a dual thing. I mean, from the plumbing industry, we're trying to do as much as we can. And I get what Colin says. Is that the real issue, guys? Is it that the guys don't want to do the work because it's very competitive and they've got to drop their standards to actually get the work? So what about that discussion? And how do we fix that?
Yeah, Steve.
One of the things, sorry, Richard, carry on, please.
No, sorry, man. I'm of a very particular opinion, and I'm perhaps not the best to answer that last question that you posed there, Steve. But because I probably won't look at too many other aspects apart from my opinion. But I feel that the only way. Look, what is the problem? Within your question, what is the problem? The problem is that you're being undercut by guys that don't have to follow procedure. So what is the solution to that problem? Well, there's two solutions. Number one, we all start plumbing like that, okay, and throw plumbing as an industry, as a profession out the window in terms of any value whatsoever, or we start to or we get rid of the undercutters. So how do we get rid of the undercutters? We drive the awareness of the fact that plumbing is a protected trade, of the fact that plumbing needs to be done to standard. And it's not something you can just click your fingers and overnight, every single Tom, Dick and Harry in the country, 64 million of us, are aware of it, and 64 million of us are going to ask for a PIRB plumbing certificate of compliance. It's not going to happen like that. So what do? The only thing we do is what we do. We plug on. You guys that are like I am as well, just a bucky plumber, a small plumber out there. We've got just as much responsibility as anyone else in the organization of IOPS or PIRB. The responsibility lies on our collective shoulders as an industry. If you give a damn about this industry, then you are responsible for it. And don't use that excuse and give it off to and say, IOPS, what are you doing? And PIRB, what have you done to stop that? Well, what have you done? What have you done when last you've come across something? What have you said or done about that? It's an impossible task for a handful of people. It's only going to be beaten as a collective and as part of a broader industry. So that is how we do it. The only other solution to that problem is to all start plumbing with 1/2-inch polycop throughout, and then we can all, make some money. Okay.
But I think in that, Richard, and sorry, we'll get to Gerrie now quickly, is that, that's not the right way to do things. We all know that. But I think that, we each have a responsibility, as you've said, is that if we all work as a collective, with a common good, and understand, Colin, just in terms of your point, is yes, there is a lot of training out there, and the audits are being done on those that are licensed. And I've got to be honest, I think what we've seen as compliance auditors throughout the last 2 years is the standard has certainly risen in terms of that. The notifications to the consumers are certainly far better than they were before. So there is a big difference. And if we look at the industry from the insurance sector, a large majority are saying this is how they are, they support it, and they won't, process the claim. So in many factors and many municipalities, there has been those inroads, but we do get the guys that slip through the net. And I think it's all up to us, to make sure that the consumers are aware, that you're creating that awareness to them when you're submitting a quotation, for example, is to say, I'm giving you a COC and it's going to be from the responsible body. Sorry, Gerrie, you want to jump in?
I was just, Steve, to connect to what you guys are saying is to me is the one question I would like to ask the audience is that, yes, it is a reality, but I would like to know what percentage of your work is actually work where you're going out, where these guys have worked, where you now have to go and do the rectification. So, yes, it's negative on that point where they don't, where they are not under any rule to do things correctly. However, I'm convinced that there's quite a substantial part of the work being done by licensed qualified plumbers, which stems from incorrect installations where the client has actually had a problem and he realizes now there's an issue, and then he contacts the licensed plumber. And that's one step closer to what we are trying to achieve, is to have the public awareness out there. And I would like to maybe just connect this to the driving way people are driving nowadays. Yeah, we all know what the Road Act says and all of these regulations regarding driving. So we see this happening where people skip the red lights, stop streets are a rumor nowadays. But if everybody starts doing that, what are we actually doing? We're not ignoring the law. We are now risking the lives of other people. And in our industry, that to me connects to each other. So if you really think about this, the standards and the regulations are there for the protection of the consumer. So that's where we play a role, is to protect the consumer in terms of legislation. So I don't know, that's just my take on all of this. And
I think if you look at it, unfortunately, at the end of the day, when we get these, is that, the consumer, I always say it, how is it that the consumer can find the IOPS or PIRB after the fact, when they've used the guy? Now, we got Clinton here. There are lots of unqualified plumbers in my area, and people are happy to use them over a qualified plumber. Agreed. We got Melville, who says, I don't enjoy being audited, as has been reason for me being beaten on the hands. I'm sorry, Melville, if the auditor went and clapped you on the hand, but I found that it has helped me raise the standard of my work to my clients. So I'm all for the direction we're moving in terms of licensed plumbers. So again, these are comments that are coming through. I think there was one there that I've missed from somebody else, where somebody, Petrus, my standard rose, and I'm very thankful for that. Edith, Foster to host and panel, about 20% are corrective. So again, the positives are coming through here. And again, what we've done from the compliance auditor side to a large extent, and we all there is in terms of soft skills and using the audit as a training session, and I think we've got so many positives from that. But I think it doesn't solve the fact that if we don't create that awareness to the consumer, in terms of why we are and why you're paying or a licensed plumber and getting the correct work and everything else, then certainly we're not doing our job. We're not marketing ourselves correctly.
Steve, could I just touch on the question that Granville Goliath put on here? I think that's the one you were alluding to, which somehow jumped off your screen.
Yeah.
It says, "G'day, we were awarded a job and replaced 3 geysers when the job and installation were complete. And all compliances were met. Now our client wants us to rectify the non-compliances. I'm assuming that's pre-existing non-compliances issues, being 2 replacements, no isolators are in position, and the things are directly supplied from the DB. So Granville, it should be rectified, but the question is at whose cost? And if it's a pre-existing situation, then perhaps what should have happened is it be picked up and said, okay, listen, let's get a qualified electrician to come and sort this thing out. But no, I don't think it's correct me if I'm wrong, guys. I don't think it's up to you just as a matter of course in terms of your cost to rectify that which was pre-existing. But it is our responsibility to check to see what needs to be done. So you need to address it somehow. And if that means that you just say to the client, hey, by the way, just be aware that when I'm done here, you need an electrician to come in here and get this thing connected correctly, and then you're clear, free and clear. And then
if I may jump in there, Richard, just to reiterate what you're saying is we need to once again go back to the standard. And if we look at the standard under maintenance, replacement and repair, 10254, it says the water heater and its ancillary components shall be maintained, replaced and repaired to comply with the standard, and any non-compliance shall be reported to the owner and user in writing. So guys, you have got no responsibility to go and repair the things that was there when you actually got on site. Your responsibility ends with informing this user or owner in writing. That's what the legislation says. Yeah, so I think we just need to not muddy the water when it comes to these things. Yes, we feel responsible, but your responsibility stops there. Remember, this installation belongs to that owner. It is his responsibility to make sure that his installation is safe and complies. You've got to.
They rely on the licensed plumber to do that, and I think it goes back to what we're saying. If you have a certificate that comes out that is something that it's not, if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it may not be a duck. But I think it's for us to basically go there. But just to go back to another message from Colin Becker, that people do see the difference what my plumbing looks like and non-red seal plumbers. Also, the knowledge that I got from PIRB makes me confident. Those guys stay clear from me because I put them away in one answer or one question. So at least there's something you guys can tap yourself on the shoulder coming from a guy down the floor. I don't know if you're on the floor.
You're not on the floor, Colin.
That's what I did on Saturday night. Unfortunately, I was on the floor. But anyway, I think the key thing is that, Colin, thank you very much for that, and to everybody else that participated this morning. And I think it's been quite a lively chat. And, again, I think we just need to look at things and say to ourselves, are we professional? I keep saying, because you can drive doesn't mean to say that you're a licensed driver. And I think that the more participation that we do and assist and guide to the consumer, because it's like Ferry says, at the end of the day, that consumer is accepting the responsibility of that installation. The responsibility lies with them. And, we have things like the Consumer Protection Act, etc., that says that you can't be something that you're not. And you need to ensure that you're doing things correctly. I see we're running out of time here. So, Kurt, we're going to wind up unless there's any other questions.
I just have one. I'm a firm believer in the plumber knowing the standards, the SANS standards, and having copies of that. And honestly, if you want to call yourself a totally professional, then your work and your SANS knowledge must must be on an equal footing, because once you know your SANS standards, no one can tell you anything, because then you know what's right and what's wrong. And unfortunately, if you took 20 plumbers, I don't know that you would find 20 plumbers with copies of the entire SANS standards. That's my take.
Yeah. Richard?
Well, I just want to say, if you keep your face pointed to the sun, then shadows will always fall behind you. So keep doing that.
Thanks, Richard, the philosopher. Richard, the philosopher. Ferry?
Yeah, guys, from my side, I think, you know, I'm one of those guys. I'm a proud plumber. And to me, that says a lot. If you are a proud plumber and you have pride in what you're doing, there's only one way to do it, and that's the correct way. And in my opinion, that is according to this the regulations and the SANS codes, which is once again for the protection of the consumer. It's not about me as a person. It's about the service that I deliver. And if you persist doing the right thing, carry on, march on, I can tell you we are making a difference collectively, all of us sitting in this room today.
Yeah, no, yeah, clearly. And I think, you know, just from the team and, you know, from myself, thank you very much for the positive engagement that we received from our attendees this morning. And it really was good, in terms of us getting a little bit vibey there. And I think that you can see the passion that we all have in terms of trying to get this industry of ours, you know, on the right track. And, you know, it's just little things like this that come up and become a bugbear. But again, I thank you all for your attendance, Karim and the team, Gerry, Kurt, Richard. Thank you very much for this morning. And if there's no other questions, Karim, we're going to close off.